This is Digital and Dice. I am your host, Mark.
I'm voiceover guy Brian.
I'm McLaren.
And I'm Michael Sayre, currently representing Drop Dead Studios for this event.
And we will be doing character creation for Drop Dead Studios' book, Spheres of Might, an alternate combat encounter system guidebook. That's about right, yeah?
Yeah.
Alright, cool. Take it away, Michael Sayre.
Alright, so Spheres of Might was a book that we'd kind of been planning for a really long time. I think actually Adam, the CEO, head publisher for Drop Dead Studios, has had this on his radar since even before I started writing with him. His first book, Spheres of Power, was revamping the magic system for Pathfinder. Instead of using the traditional slot-based, casting that we've all known from Dungeons & Dragons for basically forever, since the game first came out, it broke it down into talents, kind of like feats. Where if you wanted to cast a fireball, you would first learn destruction magic, which lets you fire a ray of energy and then shape it into a ball and then add fire, etc.
Right, building spells kind of from the base up.
Exactly.
Right.
So Spheres of Might was something where one of the things that you hear a lot of people talk about is martial caster disparity in Pathfinder, where they feel like the casters have a disproportionate impact on the game to martial characters. And this is kind of a newer one. It's come up in previous editions, but the farther back you go, the less chatter you hear about people having issues. And part of that was the narrative power that martial characters used to have. Fighters used to get keeps. Rogues had guilds. And then the other thing has to do with changes in the system as they slowly moved away from some of the older things where, certain saves were really baked into class and certain, if you wanted to just wreck everything, you played a fighter. As the system evolved, though, you could play a wizard who could turn into a dragon and then hit themselves with, a Tensor's transformation was what it was in 3.5, and I think they still have it in newer editions under, non-IP names.
Right, yeah.
And all of a sudden you had this world where, because Magic had gotten so big and so many options had been added to the game, there wasn't a lot that was truly super unique to the combat characters, the guys who didn't have magic at their beck and call. The other thing is that action economy is something that lies at, kind of the base of the system, and it's not something that always gets a lot of attention, but if you're in one of those threads where people are talking about disparity between casting characters and non-casting characters, action economy comes up. A wizard can, use a quickened spell as a swift action, then use their standard action to cast another spell, and they can use their move action to run around. If they've already, cast flight on themselves, then they're zipping all over the place, and they're operating at full effectiveness with full mobility.
They're very dynamic, moving around the battlefield,
Yes.
casting, blowing things up, and they're very all over the place.
Dynamic combat was actually my big pitch to Adam when we really got into digging this and decided that we were going to work on this project together. Dynamic and then cinematic was the word that we ended up moving on to, where a spellcaster just normally gets to move around.
Yeah.
Like, getting to run around and cast spells is just baked in there. But a fighter, right, if you move, you lose 75% of your damage. In some instances, that's obviously just a throw out. It could be up, it could be down. But you lose a significant portion of your damaging capabilities if you have to move more than 5 feet.
Right, because when you take the move action, you lose the ability to take a full attack action, so you don't get the full number of attacks you normally would.
Exactly.
Right.
So Spheres of Might, we really dug in and we were like, okay, what are the things we want to fix? One, we want people who are playing those martial characters, guys who swing swords instead of, blasting with wands. We want them moving just as much as the guys with wands. We want them to be able to get on the battlefield. We want them to be able to get at the big bad evil guy, get in the middle of the mooks, whatever it is that you want to be doing. We want to make sure that you're moving and doing it. Two, we want to give you options that'll keep your damage up while you're doing that, but we don't want to break the system by just throwing dice at the problem. So
That was pretty fun.
yeah, I mean, it can be fun. Yeah. But there's also there's also that dynamic in place. There are some systems that people have worked on where it's just big handfuls of dice will fix all the problems. We wanted something that was a little bit more finesseful,
Right.
and we wanted something that was for everybody. A lot of the martial combat systems that you see out there that are fixes for those characters, they introduce things that people don't always like. Back in 3.5, there was Book of Nine Swords, right? And it was a very divisive book.
Oh yeah.
Some people were like, "This is the best thing that's ever happened to martial characters."
And they were anime fans.
And other people were like, get your anime out of my game, weeboo fighting magic, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So we wanted something where the guys who love that weeboo fighting magic are still going to have stuff in here that they like, but we also wanted to present something that at its core was going to be good for any table. If you're more Conan of Samaria, even your wizards aren't really that spectacular. They don't cast, spells to turn into dragons.
Right.
They more like debuff you from afar and then send their zombie out to you. And some of that's a function of level, but some of that's tone as well. And that's something that's really hard normally to control in Pathfinder, is that transition in tone. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I used to say, when you get into high level in Pathfinder, if you're playing a wizard, it's like you start out as Gandalf the Grey, and eventually you're like Sasuke Uchiha from the Naruto cartoons. Like the late ones, Shippuden and stuff, where you're teleporting, turning into a giant flaming monster, sucking people into black holes they never get out of.
Yeah.
But if you're a fighter, you start out as Gimli the Dwarf, and you end as Gimli the Dwarf with a very shiny axe.
Yeah. Your actions are spent move, hit.
Yes.
And that kind of, unless you're going into very, very specific feat trees, that's kind of going to be the end of it, yeah.
Yeah. So we wanted you to be able to play a character where you start as Gimli, and maybe you kind of end as Gimli, but you're not just doing the same Gimli things. You're not just swinging the axe, So, for example, we have like the Brute and the Berserker spheres are two of the spheres in Spheres of Might. So if you want to play a dwarf who just tears things down and throws people around the battlefield, the Brute sphere gives you all kinds of combat maneuver type stuff, bull rushing, repositioning, all of those movement-based combat maneuvers, and new ways to utilize them and work them into attack routines. So low-level Gimli might, run up and shove somebody to throw them off balance. Just a little thing that opens them up for, a later combat maneuver, and then hit him with his axe. High-level Gimli might come in, do a shove to throw them off balance, do a locomotion to spin them in a circle, and then throw them onto the ground, and then while they're prone, hit them with a big axe finisher, that takes advantage of the debuffs. Or Berserker Gimli might, go straight for the breastplate to do a massive, brutal blow, sundering strike, and smash their armor apart, and then take another swing at them.
Nice.
And he can do that while he's moving around the field and fighting. You get that cinematic combat. Die Hard was one of the movies we talked about as, kind of an example of that cinematic combat and where we wanted to get, where if you guys are the heroes, you should be able to have a running fight. You shouldn't be trying to just butt heads until somebody dies and then do it with the next guy. The more that you can move, the more that the map matters, and the more that the choices and tactics that the team use get to come into play. It's not just deliver the meat grinder onto the meat.
Right, and it allows the DM to add more things that happen on the map that the players can interact with, because sometimes when you want there to be a pool of acid on one side of the match, but all the fighting happens at the other end because no one wants to spend a movement action.
Exactly. Yeah. And some monsters can get surprisingly boring. As well. So dragons, right? I want dragons moving. Like, if I'm a GM and I'm running a dragon, I want to be swooping across the battlefield with my breath weapon. I want to do a flyby attack where I'm just snipping at the mage. Maybe I do like a flyby grapple and then drop him somewhere else away from his protectors.
Do the one thing that dragons always do. They land and attack, and you're like, why would they ever do that? It's like, well, because otherwise everybody else would do nothing.
Right. That's exactly
all the
right,
fighters
though.
and rogues do absolutely nothing. The wizard's the only one who can do it because, well, he's flying 60 feet in the air and breathing fire on everybody.
Right.
That's exactly right, though. As a GM, you can feel kind of bad if you play a dragon to its full potential. The wizard can probably interact.
Depends on the DM.
Depends on the players as well.
So.
But you want to let everybody participate, but sometimes making sure that the fighter gets his piece of action or that the rogue gets his time in the spotlight means that you have to play down, or you have to, kind of have one of the players, be like, I know your summoner can do everything. I know, Brian, that your summoner can do everything. But maybe let the rogue pick that lock instead of your brownie that you summon in for lock picking occasions. Maybe just forget about the brownie for a while.
Right.
We don't want to see that happening. We want everybody to be on that same dynamic, and that was really what Spheres of Might is about, is put everybody on that same field, where if you've got a moving battle, everybody can move, and it's not punishing somebody.
Okay.
And also concept-based character creation is another big thing. We'll get into that as we actually drill in and start building characters.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, what we're going to go ahead and do now, we're all going to, real quick, just get our base stats and our things out of the way, and we'll come back and we'll explain what we've made, and then we're going to start on the actual generation using the book. Welcome back. We have chosen our races and gotten our base stats, so now what we're going to do is we're going to give a general idea of what kind of character we would like to make, and we're then going to have Michael provide how the system would then build that character. So, voiceover guy Brian, please tell us who you are playing.
Well, I'm making Dunstan Boltshire, sort of a tavern-fighting friar who... sort of guy who ends up beating up a whole bunch of guys using the bench from wherever they were eating last.
Okay.
All right. So with Spheres of Might, this is a really fun thing that we kind of added in here. You get martial traditions. If you look through the book and you kind of skip to the classes, one of the first things that's gonna hit you is like, man, my class doesn't have any proficiencies. No martial weapon proficiency on, a character called the Sentinel. And the thing is we took those proficiencies and we replaced them with much more thematically aligned components. So you pick a martial tradition that kind of describes what you want to do. Knowing the character that you were going for, I kind of sketched out that the Drunken Brawler tradition
that sounds appropriate.
would probably be far and away the best fit for you. They give you unarmed training, which is kind of a packet of, basic unarmed necessities. The barroom sphere, which is literally the I want to beat people up with chairs and, mugs and whatever comes to hand sphere.
Excellent.
And the wrestling sphere.
Is there a drunken sphere? Is there a sphere of drunkenness?
Well, so we have the barroom. Barroom is a sphere.
Oh, okay.
There's,
good.
Yeah,
so there is a sphere of drunkenness.
It is an entire sphere, and one of its mechanics is the drunk condition and using it for various buffs and things.
Okay, so looking at the abilities, and it provides bonus talents.
Correct.
So like you said, the equipment, unarmed training, and then access to the two spheres, the barroom sphere and the wrestling sphere, and then... The variable, it says they gain the talent of their choice from either the barroom or wrestling sphere. So
that's correct.
So they kind of give you the starting package. Some people who've maybe played, say, Starfinder, the idea of like the archetypes of character before you choose class, that kind of seems to be going in the same direction, giving you a flavor of whatever class you're being.
We actually had a really good chuckle because we started this before anything had really leaked about Starfinder, but we did know that we were going to do a Starfinder conversion for this, and so we got our developer third-party copies of Starfinder before everybody else got their hands on them.
Lucky.
So we could start on our product building. And one of the first things we saw, we were like, they had all the same ideas we did.
This conversion will be easy.
Yeah.
It actually ended up being a lot easier than anticipated.
Nice.
Well, all right then.
Erase this one and replace it with barroom sphere. There we go.
All right, so
Conversion complete.
So you get to choose one martial tradition, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's going to flavor. So if he's playing a whatever class he goes into, it's going to be flavor with the fact that he's a drunken brawler.
That's correct.
If he was a sorcerer, he's a drunken brawling sorcerer, or a bard or a monk fighter or whatever.
That is flippin' rad. I like the idea of that as well.
Yeah. It gives you a lot of freedom.
I feel that a drunken brawler druid
Suddenly there's just an angry drunken bear in the middle of the room who's like, "Roar."
Absolutely.
Brian's
I
like,
would play
pause the
this.
cameras. I need to restart.
Okay, cool. So we have the drunken brawler. McLaren, what is it you wanted to make?
I am making a gnome named Tashi, whose basic idea is that they are they don't seem to like they're doing anything, and then suddenly they're just covered in weapons, and they can throw knives and pull out a crossbow and have a rapier and everything like that. Like they're just covered in weapons, unassumingly.
You're like the trope of the person who's told, like, when they're going through a checkpoint, it's like, okay, leave all your weapons, and then there's the one person who's taking all their weapons out, and
Exactly.
then the party ends, and they have to start picking up all their weapons again. Right, so that's
Exactly,
you.
yes, yes.
And you're a gnome named Tashi.
Yes.
Nice. So how does that fit in Spheres of Might?
So looking at the martial traditions, and I will throw in at this point as well, if you can't find a martial tradition that's a perfect fit, we give you rules for how to build your own.
Nice.
Okay.
You know, guidelines, things like you shouldn't have too many from any one sphere. You don't want to pile in too many combat talents, because the martial traditions that we have in there really are formulated to be good, balanced starting points.
Okay.
You're not going to get a glass cannon-y character, or you shouldn't. You can get there if you want to, but
Right.
you
You
know.
try really hard.
Yeah.
Do you have things on how to make spheres?
We don't, because, well, one, we, have a business, and we don't want to tell people.
We'll release more books with more spheres, and we're going to buy them. That is how this works.
Oh, economy, right.
No, this is fine. And the thing is, it makes sense, though, because, and this is just my thoughts in general, is I would rather have them already play-tested and balanced than try to make something on my own 9 times out of 10, because I don't always necessarily trust myself to make a balanced thing, because 3 sessions in, I'm like, well, I've killed every living thing on the continent. I guess I maybe put a little too many points in this one thing, but yeah.
Just a little.
But martial traditions, we
yeah.
make our own.
Yeah.
So getting you started, I definitely have a good class idea for you, but we're on the martial tradition, so we'll get everybody's kind of locked in.
Okay.
Guild training and dedicated duelist were kind of my 2 thoughts for you. And so guild training is a very classic rogue package. It's going to give you like all of the things where when you think of like that really tropey rogue, the guy who's got rapiers and daggers and hand crossbows and almost like a Jarlaxle kind of character.
Right,
if
right.
you read the Salvatore novels with Dristorden and everything.
Yeah.
It-
Mary Sue saga, yeah.
right. But it doesn't have a lot of the big weapons like scimitars and stuff like that. But it's got all of the easily hidden weapons.
Oh, yeah.
And some fun little perks like it gives you the poison package of the alchemy sphere, so you can also slap some poison on your weapons, which is never ever a bad thing.
Yeah.
And then the dedicated duelist is less specifically roguey, but more of a dexterous kind of fast fighter in general.
Kind of swashbucklery style?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
Things like pistols and rapiers and cutlasses and very very much that package. Those kind of things that you would see in there. And the tweak there is the dedicated duelist is definitely more focused on someone who's going to spend a lot of time in the front of combat as opposed to someone who wants to get the jump on somebody. So I think what you're going for, guild training, is going to be better, but I did...
Sounds like it, but yeah.
The big advantage to dedicated duelist is since it's swashbucklery, you get to choose between either unarmored training or gauntlet shield.
Oh.
And
Oh, yeah.
so that is a nice little defensive twist that you're not going to get out of guild training.
Okay.
That's like
So-
some 7th Sea stuff right
Yeah.
there. I remember the defensive, the actual fencing gauntlet as a shield. I loved that concept.
Yeah. And that's baked right into the
And then you
dedicated
can also
duelist.
slap people with it. So
Right, yeah.
what's the use of having a gauntlet if you can't just backhand people with it?
Right.
So whichever one of those kind of sounds best to you, for your character concept. I would say those are the ways you want to go. And then that might influence, the direction and ideas that I might throw your way later. Because there's things that are going to complement guild training a lot better and let you kind of embrace that roguey aspect a little bit more. And then there's things that are going to be a lot more fun. Like, if you're playing the dedicated duelist and you're like, in this hand, I'm going to be switching between rapiers and pistols and whatever seems appropriate to the moment. I'm always going to be bitch slapping you with this hand.
Nice.
So we would definitely probably look at dual wielding if we went the dedicated duelist route. Whereas if we go with guild training, you're going to be more about, kind of getting the drop on people and focusing on those, the big early hit and hoping you stack enough debuffs on then that they never really come back from it.
Okay.
Kill them right now.
Yeah, so of your two choices...
I think dedicated duelist is more fun.
Okay.
I like it much better. Oh, sorry, bitch slapping people. You can't.
Right.
You can't not.
So we got barroom brawling kind of grappler dude. We got our dedicated duelist dex-based fighter, and then we have me. We have Rurik Anvilmaster, dwarven fighter, and just massive meat with a hammer.
You're going to go with that dwarf voice?
That's my dwarf voice. Shut up.
So I was looking at it, and I figured it's really hard for that kind of classic dwarven concept to go with a martial tradition other than heavy armsman.
Right.
Heavy armsman literally has dwarven heritage as its weapon package, which is,
there we go.
axes and hammers and
Right.
that stuff. Armor training to get you into the heavier armors. Mm-hmm. The Berserker Sphere for the really big opening hits.
Nice.
And then you get your variable where you can either pick up an additional equipment talent and kind of round out either your proficiencies or, tag a little something on to the way that you use your gear, or a bonus Berserker talent so you can just double down on the smash face.
Right. Okay, yeah, I do believe that is kind of the overwhelming force is what I wanted to go with this. I want to hit something really, really hard as many times as I can.
Yeah, I think heavy armsman is going to be the fit there. There were a few other things, but none of them quite seemed to click in. I don't think...
Now, I believe I did see the word blacksmith go by.
So blacksmith is a class.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it will partner up with your heavy armsman tradition to create a very unique and awesome and ridiculously dwarfy character.
Okay. Well then, not to skip us ahead too much there, but so heavy armsman is my martial tradition, and it's all about the getting the weapon, getting the armor, and then hitting people really hard with the Berserker Sphere.
That is correct.
Okay, got it. So, heavy armsman, guild... Oh, no, the
dedicated
duelist and the drunken brawler?
Yep.
Okay, so we've chosen our martial tradition. The next step, I believe, is choosing what class.
That is correct. And so like you and I discussed, blacksmith is an awesome fit. Blacksmith goes really well with Berserker 2. They have a key class feature called Thunderous Blows, where they get almost like sneak attack damage on their sunder attempts, and they get spillover.
Ooh.
So when you break somebody's equipment, all the extra damage goes straight into them. So if you want to play the guy who's literally smashing through people's shields to chop their arm off, hammering through their breastplate to just sink your axe into their chest, blacksmith is very, very good at doing that.
Sold. Good. All right.
You mentioned that there was a class that when I first talked about my character, there was a class that you were thinking of.
Yes. You had talked about wanting to just be the guy with all the weapons, and we actually have a class in Spheres of Might that is the guy with all the weapons. It's called the Armiger. And the Armiger has a bunch of custom weapons. Mm-hmm. He actually, gets a little bit more use out of his spheres, but less at any one time than another character. So, like, Brian as a dwarven blacksmith, right? He's
that
always...
Brian.
Or, sorry, Mark. I know, I was pointing...
It's a person on that
No,
side
I got
of
you
the
guys
table.
right on my piece of paper. I just... But Mark with his dwarven blacksmith, he's going to have a few less talents, but he's always going to have the full spread of his abilities. As an armiger, you are going to have your talents tied to the weapons you're using. So while you've got your crossbow out, maybe you're a sniper. And then maybe
that's actually kind of interesting.
Sling your crossbow away and, whip out your rapier and now you're using fencing abilities. Or you whip out your daggers and you've taken the alchemy package and the poison sphere. And while your daggers are out, you've customized them all with, little poison fat quick releases or whatever on them. And as you go up in levels, you get the ability to start not just swapping between those weapons from round to round, but as part of a single attack routine. You'll get Rapid Assault, where you could, whip out a crossbow, fire it, it connects, you sling it over, and now you get to use an attack of opportunity to draw and hit someone with your sword, it connects, and then you get to use your last attack of opportunity to whip out this next weapon, whatever it is.
I see.
And kind of combos, yeah.
And so you really build into that, I am a master of all of these weapons I'm carrying. There's a reason I carry 20 different weapons. It's not just to be prepared. It's because you're going to feel all of them by the end of this fight.
Now, do I become a prince, have 3 best friends, and a car?
No.
That is entirely optional and not in any way baked into the class.
Now, see, I love the fact that it's like that because in most combat systems and in most leveling systems, you get to basically specialize in your one thing. Yep. So most rogues are like, okay, they can throw a dagger, but they're better with their rapier.
Yeah, they have the one weapon.
Right, but this way is that when you pull it out, it's like, I am a master of this weapon. And this weapon, but only when the weapon is out, and that kind of makes sense so that things don't necessarily have to bleed over, but they can eventually into those combos. That's a really neat system.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Good on you. All right, so we got Armiger as a class, we have Blacksmith, and then what's up with this guy?
So, Brian wanting to be a kind of drunken friar, amusingly enough, actually, almost any of the can really kind of click into that role. I was gonna make some suggestions kind of towards, depending on how you want to click into the group, since we are going to be playing a real game. If you want to be a friar who, beats people around and stuff, but then also has some tricks, some ways to kind of debuff, and some ways to heal your allies, there's the Scholar class. And the Scholar class is, when I wrote it, my kind of initial idea was Leonardo da Vinci, the class. It's got a flying machine and everything as one of its potential class features that it can learn how to make.
Oh, I see. Flying machine, but I don't get a car. I get it now. I see how this is.
He's Muscle Da Vinci. Okay, got it.
Muscle Da Vinci.
He is the Vitruvian Man.
It gets alchemy, which can be really useful because, one, alchemy, kind of syncs up pretty well with the fast drinking and stuff that goes along with the barroom sphere, and two, it gives you access to some non-magical healing salves and things like that for your group.
Then you can put
Take
poisons
an assault tablet and walk it off.
Then you can put poisons on your fists.
Wait. The Striker is my colleague N. Jolly wrote the Striker, and it is in his words, Punch Girl the class.
See, I went down the wrong way. I should have tried to make One Punch Man the character.
Exactly.
And Striker, actually, their kind of class hook is that they have a tension mechanic.
Oh.
So as you're punching or getting hit or whatever, you're building up tension, and then you can release tension for, big, massive blows and hits and stuff like that. And so that works really good with the drunken brawler idea.
It's all about stress relief.
Yeah.
And then kind of the catch-all that we have.
It's cathartic.
That's always an option, is we have the conscript. And conscript is build a marshal the class. It's basically just packets of options. You get more talents, you get some bonus feats, you get variable skills. And you can trade in your bonus feats, because they've got the same number of bonus feats as a fighter. They don't have any of the other fighter class features, but...
So no bravery and the armor mastery type things.
But they can sell down their feats to get into those things if they want them. And that both kind of keeps the fighter strong in its place without being, totally replaced by this, conscript, which shares that flexibility of function, that ability to really build it.
Because fighter being one of, if anything, when it comes to the core books, fighter is the most versatile of any of the martial classes because they're primarily made up of bonus feats with a small sprinkling of other abilities like bravery and armor mastery.
Yeah.
So
conscript is a big packet, essentially, of class features, and it steals from just about every martial class. If you want to mount like a cavalier, you can sell down some of your bonus feats for a mount. If you want to sneak attack, you can sell down some bonus feats for sneak attack. And so that's kind of if Striker doesn't quite catch you and Scholar isn't quite giving you what you want, you'll get wherever you want to go with Conscript as that last, what do you need?
got it. Okay.
Okay.
So have you come up to a conclusion as to which of the ones you would like to try?
I think I'm going to give Scholar a run because it seems like it'd be something sort of fun. Also, getting to make myself new and wonderful drinks.
All right. Sounds good.
No drunken bear.
Not today, but it is totally an option.
Fair.
So I
wait.
think what we will do then is we will get that down on paper, and then we will come back and discuss the sphere talents.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now that we have chosen our classes and our martial tradition, we're going to talk a little bit about what sphere talents are and how they kind of incorporate and make the system what it is.
Yeah. So spheres, obviously, it's called Spheres of Might. They're the backbone of the system. There are, I want to say, 23 spheres that we wrote, and they cover just about everything, and it's not just strictly hitting things with a sword. We've got the alchemy sphere for kind of your non-magical magic.
You mentioned that about poisoning. You'd have alchemy sphere. Yeah.
Poison, improved alchemist's fire. If you want to throw that thing and mix a little extra Molotov on there,
Nice.
for some boom. You've got that healing if you want to make salves and panaceas and things like that. So that kind of rounds out all the stuff that characters who swing swords normally don't get to do. The barroom sphere for if you want to be a barroom fighter. We've even got some kind of more not esoteric, but there's the war leader sphere.
Okay.
Right? And we have the commander class, and those really complement each other very well. But if you want part of your thing to not just be beating people up, but also supporting the party and buffing people and yelling at them and being like, hit that guy harder. No, really, hit him harder, and then having it have a mechanical effect.
Like the 4th edition Warlord Commander Strike and things like that.
Very much so, yeah.
Okay.
The commander is actually kind of based on that idea of the lazy warlord from
Nice.
4E, where you can fight if you want to, but you're going to be much more inclined to spend your actions making other people do the work.
Okay.
So
from what I understand of spheres is kind of like a martial tradition, it then furthers the flavor of the class you're doing. So for example, I am the heavy armored dwarf with a big hammer, and I'm a blacksmith. So that tells me that I'm a heavy armsman, I'm a blacksmith. The spheres, they seem to have the base abilities that you get for just being in the sphere itself.
Yep.
And then talents that go and you kind of build up from there.
That's exactly right. Every sphere, when you put your first talent into it or when you gain it from a martial tradition, the first thing that happens is that you get the base ability that's associated with that sphere. And it kind of varies depending on the sphere. In the case of the alchemy sphere, it's actually pick a formula is the base ability,
Nice.
know.
Okay.
The war leader sphere gives you your shouts and your tactics.
Okay.
Where you can either standard action, do a big let's get 'em, and everybody gets a morale bonus, or the tactics, which is more similar to if you've ever seen the Cavalier in Pathfinder. They have the tactician ability where you share the teamwork feats.
Right, yeah.
That's what tactics are a lot more similar to, except for you don't need everybody to buy in. You have one guy who gets to set the tactic up and then benefit everybody who can see and hear him within that area.
Way better than
And then as you buy more talents into that, you get, for War Leader, for example, you can learn new shouts that do new things or new tactics that allow you to situate people in different ways. Alchemy, you get to learn, new formulas or poisons.
I think it just clicked what I was thinking about with this whole thing, and one of the reasons why I'm really enjoying the whole concept is this is basically Uber Gestalt. This is the idea of taking the bits and pieces of whatever classes you like and then just throwing them together in your own kind of homebrew class, but actually giving you a framework to make it. So, I mean, you're the scholar and you're doing your brawling and your drunken master, but taking a healing sphere suddenly makes you more cleric-y or more paladin-y and the ability to heal the party. You could just as easily take that healing sphere and say, hey, I'm also going to be able to heal because now I'm the healing weapon master rogue. And the concept
my bullets heal you.
Right, or what have you. The idea of being able to build up, you have your general idea, but then your abilities can be flavored in whatever way you want them to be. And that just, it's like, boom, blown my mind when I just kind of thought of that.
There's a beast mastery sphere.
Of course there is.
Does it come with proficiency in Fur Mankini?
We just kind of assumed that would fall under light armor.
Do you get ferrets?
So you can if
Awesome.
you want.
All right.
Armiger with Beast Mastery, you no longer pull out weapons, you start pulling out animals.
You just pull out the honey badger?
Yeah, Honey Badger. You throw it out.
One of my villains in a game that I'm running for another group is actually a scholar who has invested heavily into the Beast Mastery sphere. And so most of her stuff is, my original idea was that she's kind of the spy master type, where she's really dangerous until you're in a room with her, and then she's significantly less of a threat. But I had to give her one trick, right? And so the party for that game, they figure out who she is and they're coming to get her. But she's got all of her little animal spies who bring her the news. When the party gets there, she's taken her flock of trained hawks and they all know the drop animal trick, and she's given them her improved alchemist's fire. So as soon as the party comes onto her property, she sees them from her window and she sends her hawks out to bombard the party with her alchemist fire. So
the possibilities of this, I'm just looking at it. Just, you want to make a villain and you just be like, you know what, none of these classes, and I don't want to go through the problem of multi-classing. I'm just going to be like, yeah, and I have a wizard. Sure, he's, wielding a great sword. That's fine, because he's got the brute sphere, and it allows him to do this. Or it's great how that works. So moving back to spheres, so we have, you said, was it 23?
I believe 23.
23, flavors in Dr. Pepper. And then we have, was it ingredients?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah. So we have all these different spheres. We have all the base abilities that you get for doing them. And then you have sphere talents.
Yes. And so the talents allow you to build out from the base concept generally. And some spheres have kind of one big concept and others have two. Mm-hmm. The duelist sphere is one of the spheres I wrote, and that actually has kind of two concepts in it. One is disarming, and the other one is bleeding. Inflicting bleeding wounds.
You're very disarming, McLaren.
And you can kind of put those together as well if you want, and it works really, really well, where you can start out with a disarm where when you lock up with them, you drag your blade across their knuckles to inflict a bleeding wound. And now that bleed damage makes them easier to disarm because their hand's bloody and slippery. And you can build out into other talents in that sphere, and stay down is one of the first talents. And so that one is whenever somebody falls prone, you can make an attack of opportunity to inflict a bleeding wound on them. and now they've got to make an acrobatics check where the DC is determined in part by the amount of bleed damage they're taking, because they're literally just slipping in their own blood on the floor.
Malcolm Reynolds.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I'm okay.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm a good man. I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
That's perfect. Okay. So at this point, we have our spheres, we have the idea that what we're going for, and so that's going to give us kind of our going to flesh out those classes a little bit more and make us more just robust and give us more options in combat.
Yep.
So how do feats figure into the system? Because, I mean, I'm a fighter-ish thing, or if I was playing a fighter, for example, I have these bonus feats. What am I doing with them that's different in Spheres of Might than just core?
Yep. So there's, at their base, feats are kind of the same thing. You can still take them, you can do them. One of the things that Spheres of Might really doesn't support is the full attack. We're really focused on moving and the attack action, which is a specific type of standard action.
Right.
So if you want to play like a 2-weapon fighter, for example, you could kind of go the classic route where you're picking up the full attack 2-weapon fighting with your feats and then using your talents for when you're moving, so you have that kind of blender option for when it's appropriate.
Right.
Or there's always the extra talent feat, which you can spend as often as you want and just get more talents in your spheres. So it really just depends on what you want to do. There's stuff we didn't want to completely rewrite the book. There wasn't a lot of point to that. So things like Iron Will, Great Fortitude, Lightning Reflexes,
right.
Those standards. You're still going to want to take probably 1 or 2 of those, depending on your character as you go along. I
know there's a little bit of interplay, like, for example, the end stay down, where when someone's prone, you get that attack of opportunity, is normally relegated to the improved trip. Or when you trip someone, you can then make an attack of opportunity on the prone target. Yeah. So it kind of takes the place of that.
Yeah. We also have, some talents have an associated feat, and that's where we just say, this is that feat for this system. Either we've reprinted it because it's key to this particular combat style, or we've done it a little bit differently, but we know that there are other books out there that are going to key off of, for example, improved trip.
Right.
And so if you know this talent, then you count as having improved trip, so you can kind of go into and explore those other options from other publishers, from core, whatever. So we really, end of the day is we want you to make the character you want to build. We want you to be able to have a really specific concept of what your character is and get there. Level appropriate, of course.
Right.
If your concept is my guy, cuts holes through the air to other planes and can kick the ground so hard that it's the same thing as flying because he just Hulk glides from location to location, you can do that. It's in the legendary talents, and some of those are level gated.
We're going to talk about those in another episode, absolutely, because I want Rurik Anvilmaster to be using the ground as one of his many weapons against his foes.
I threw the earth at you.
Yeah.
Like the whole planet.
And that also kind of ties into the whole reason for the legendary talents is, like I said, we want it to be a system for everybody. If you don't like the idea that someone can get so strong that they can Hulk jump their way across the continent, or do like the crouching tiger thing and just kind of sword glide their way from
the
location.
wushu kind of jumping from bamboo shoot to bamboo shoot, right?
If you don't like that stuff, then you can just skip the legendary talents chapter, and we tell you that.
No, you can't.
Man,
not today.
Who would dare?
If there is one thing that I know personally I've wanted for a very long time, it's the fact of I wanted to run a fantasy superhero type game, and that, again, we'll talk at length about that another time, but that is something that we're going to have to do. So, the Spheres of Might has tickled all of my itches. So overall, feats. Oh yeah, yes,
tickled all of it.
That's why I'm adjusting myself. So we have feats that are, again, as you were saying, they're pretty much mostly there with things that are equivalent and things that are, again, if they work the same way, they're going to be used as said feat if you're going out to take a class from some other splat book or whatever. So then how do skills figure in? Because if you're mentioning someone's going to be jumping, right? You want them to jump Hulk style from place to place. Normally that would be this Pathfinder athletics. Yeah.
Yep.
So how does that play?
So one of the reasons that skills is the last thing we're talking about in this character creation process is because there are a lot of skills built into spheres. Like, we have an entire athletics sphere, right? And obviously you can't be good at athletics if you don't have the corresponding skills, climbing and swimming and athletics and acrobatics and
running,
things like
jumping,
that.
climbing trees, putting on makeup while you're up there. Yeah.
Right. So when you take that, you actually get automatic ranks and associated skills. If you take the swim package of the athletic sphere, you're going to get your first 5 ranks of swim for free. So up to level 5, that is a skill that's now auto-leveling itself up. You just get a rank in there. The next time that you take a talent that falls under that package, you get your next 5 ranks. So it's not going to just... taking one talent isn't going to instantly make you like, aha, I never need to spend a skill point on this again.
Right.
But it will give you a strong foundation, and you can either keep building on that sphere, and that will automatically progress that skill for you, or you can be like, really the only thing that I wanted out of the athletic skill sphere was the scale foe ability. I wanted climb, and I wanted to be able to climb on things that were larger than me and stab them in the kidneys as a thing.
I don't know. I think if I had the choice, I would be making the best damn swimmer in the 10 realms. I would put every single sphere talent into swimming because it needs to be done. If I'm going to be good at one thing, swimming.
There's a legendary talent that lets you swim in things that aren't water, essentially a burrow speed. So, yeah.
Okay, I immediately thought like ogre, like you're just going to swim through an ogre. I mean,
not creatures, but most types of terrain.
Swim through trees.
It really opens.
oh Lord. I mean,
So through foliage, you're just above every. You plebs walking through the forest.
just swimming through the foliage.
So
Foliage.
Foliage, whatever.
Whatever, yeah.
So fundamentally, skills work the same, but a lot of spheres will hang on them and add things to them and interact with them in certain ways. So when you're building your character, you want to come at skills last because you've probably already picked up a few skills from the spheres that you've chosen. If you're a scholar, you've got scout and you've got alchemy, so your craft alchemy is covered, your stealth's covered, you're not going to need to put skills into those. So you'll have this kind of framework. You'll see what skills did I automatically get as I spent my talents, and now where do I put the last of the skills I get? This is going to be the fun part for you as a scholar. You're an int-based class who also gets 8+ int skills per level and a huge skill list.
All right then.
Plus alchemy for an auto skill. So you're probably gonna be a really spectacular skill monkey. That's gonna be very foundational to your abilities.
All the skills.
Nice.
But you're also kind of taking the place of the spellcaster in the group as that scholar, and so you need that broader base of non-magical abilities to kind of get to that same place as the guy who's got magic.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So overall, I mean, now that we've kind of gone through all of the things, like at the very basic level, because this is a robust book.
Yes.
From what I mentioned, I think
I see archetypes right here.
right.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, we're talking over 220 some odd pages of information in this book. So we're not talking just a thin little splat book that you can go through. It's involved. So because we've covered all of kind of the basic ideas for our characters, moving forward, we're going to be doing another episode of this where we're going to be doing a mock combat, and he's going to run us through how these are actually going to fight and how we're going to use our abilities that we've chosen today. So I think, for now that we have kind of the baseline of what we're going to be using, this is a great opportunity for you to pimp yo stuff. Where can people find Spheres of Might?
So Spheres of Might is available on DriveThruRPG, RPG Now, all the OBS, one bookshelf sites.
Okay.
We sell on Paizo through their web store. The Open Gaming Store right now is a really great place to pick up Spheres of Might, because not only can you get Spheres of Might, but there's a giant bundle for Drop Dead Studios that I think is still going for a couple days that includes a significant amount of their back catalog.
Not sure about the timing of the release, but check anyway.
Yeah. It may have ended by now. If so, you missed out, but keep an eye out. Like I said, the bundle that's going on right now has like the Luchador and the War Dancer and, like I said, basically everything except for the the 2 newest books. Champions of the Spheres. If you like Spheres of Might and you have looked at Spheres of Power as your alternate combat system, Champions of the Spheres is a book that you really need to have those 2 core books to take advantage of, because it integrates them together. It's got some crazy classes. Like, if you like that superhero high fantasy kind of thing, the Prodigy is a combo class that gets finishers based on the spheres they know.
Oh, man.
So, like, if you know alchemy, there's an alchemy finisher, you know? If you know the warp sphere for magic, then there's a warp finisher. The Sage is, like, anime character the class. If you want to play Master Roshi or Krillin or Tsunade from Naruto, or most of the characters from Hunter x Hunter, or you know, like those characters who have kind of weird but tropey, you see it a lot, but the Sage has it all packed in there.
Oh, nice.
And the way that I set the Sage up, you can be the very combat Sage, you know, more of like the Bruce Lee. I don't do a lot of magical stuff. My key abilities are all about self-enhancement and things like that. Or you can go full Dragon Ball, and you can throw severing discs of energy. You can fire a blast of energy from your hands. You can use ki to like tie people up, throw them around.
Sounds pretty excellent.
Yeah, all of
that's
those things.
the sphere,
And that's Champions of the Spheres, and the class is the Sage. That also has the Troubadour, which is essentially they get identities, and you can swap between identities, and each identity has a packet of abilities that go with it, and they're based on theater tropes.
The Master of Masks prestige class from 3.5, I believe, is something very
pretty similar to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the armature, but with
characters from
masks.
Mass Effect and Drama.
Well, yeah, it's where the Armiger is about swapping between weapons. The Troubadour is about like swapping between full ability sets. Like, haha, I'm a wizard. Haha, now I'm a rogue.
Nice. I'm all on board. So, dear Digidicers, we will be joining you next episode, where we're going to be playing the characters we have built today and explaining how combat actually works and how we're going to use all of this really cool stuff that we figured out now. So, again, I would like to thank you again, Michael Sayre, for showing up. Thank you, McLaren. Thank you, voiceover Brian, for joining us for this. Thank you, those of you who are in the back, sound guy Steven, and our good friend Ryder, who is helping out with our audio and video engineering. So, thanks for joining us. Definitely check out Spheres of Might. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll see you next episode. And until then,
Game on, internets!